I would like to thank my colleagues for being here today, and I would also like to welcome all the students. This event is really about you. I would like to extend a special welcome to those of you who are freshmen or transfer students. Do we have any of those in the group? Fantastic. So a warm welcome to all of you. And this is also about the rest of us, the rest of your colleagues, as a way to sort of quickly get a feeling of who we are in this department, what it is that we specialize in, what kind of classes we do, and what kind of research opportunities we have to offer you. So it's going to be like a very condensed, little brief introduction of who we are and what we do, in the hopes that it's going to help you navigate the program a little easier. If you're not already an anthropology major or minor, to make you consider joining us, or just take some of our classes and have some food and have some fun, and feel free to ask questions at the end and in the break and all of that. Our program is structured around the concentrations we have. So we have 3 majors in anthropology. One is the archaeological anthropology major, one is the sociocultural anthropology major, and the other one is the biological anthropology major. So we try to sort of organize the presentations by your faculty with that in mind. Are there any questions, objections, remarks, anything that you want to? No? Okay, all right. So I'm going to get going and introduce our advisor of undergraduate studies, Ms. Nicole Daneshvar, who really put all of this together for you today. And she's going to give you some information about the organizational aspect of today's event. And then we'll take it from there. Okay, so welcome everybody.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming to the Anthropology Show and Tell. My name is Nicole, I'm the undergraduate advisor here at the Department of Anthropology. And today is a unique event since you'll get to see the great opportunities for the Anthropology Department, as well as see each of our amazing faculty members. In the middle of our presentations, we'll be having an intermission just outside where you can enjoy some tasty snacks and mingle with undergrads, grads, and faculty members. And at the end of our presentations, we'll be serving pizza in room 105. All right, so are you guys ready?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, let's get started with the Anthropology Club. All right.
Hello everybody, thank you very much for coming. We are the Anthropology Club, and we represent 2 of the 4 board members that are on the board for this year. My name is Isabel Hermsmeyer. I am a biological anthropology major as well as a biology major, and I'm this year's president.
And I'm Dion. I'm the Ant Club treasurer, and as well as Isabel, I am double majoring in EBE and BioAnth.
And unfortunately, Jessica and Alex couldn't be here today, but Jessica is a sociocultural anthropology major, and she's the vice president, and Alex is also a sociocultural major, and he is our events coordinator this year. Fortunately, we don't have anyone in archaeology on the board, so we would very much love to have some archaeology people come and join us at our meetings, especially to get that representation there. All right, and so our plans for 2016, 2017, the main one, of course, being on-campus meetings. So these will consist of food, the most important thing, and anthropology-based discussion. So it'll be something along the lines of, we'll send out a general topic about a few days to a week before the meeting with a couple of, not scholarly, purely peer-reviewed articles, but some quick news articles about it to kind of get you in on the information. Then we can come together and discuss it. It's mostly meant to be a place for like-minded individuals to discuss and debate anthropology related things. And then another thing we're going to be doing this year is talks from professionals, which is where we will be asking some of our great faculty members to come in and do a kind of give us a history of themselves in academics and in research, and as well as to do a sort of Q&A type of thing. So you can kind of get a little bit more in touch with your professors, as well as learn a little bit about what they did to get where they are today. And then last but not least is field trips. And as some of you may know, we have a great area called Balboa Park pretty close by with lots of great museums, including the Museum of Man, which is an anthropology museum. There's also the San Diego Archaeological Center, which is a bit far away. It's in Escondido, but it's a great place. The Natural History Museum, also in Balboa Park, and the San Diego Zoo, if any of you guys have animal classes. It's a great place, especially if you're interested in primatology. Lots of apes, lots of monkeys. And they have eyes now. If anybody knows what those are, that's weird. All right, and our first meeting is this Friday from 5 to 7, and it's going to be in the Spiro Library. It's going to be in this building, but on the second floor in Spiro Library, and that's room 269. And it's gonna be a pretty informal meeting, lots of just mostly potluck and games, kind of get to know you. So we really welcome any new transfers, any new freshmen, anybody, of course. So please come, we'd really love to have you. All right, and I think that's it for us. No. Okay, now we're going to be talking about the honors thesis program. In addition to the Anthropology Club, that's one of the things that will also be open to discuss in the Anthropology Club is the honors thesis program. The honors thesis program is something that the Anthropology Department offers to seniors in the anthropology major, and it's a really, really great opportunity where you can work with one of the great faculty members here at UCSD on a topic of your choice. And it's a year-long research project. The first quarter, you're putting together a proposal. Second quarter, you're actually writing your thesis. And the third quarter, you get to work on presenting it. And if any of you guys are interested in going into research, academia, it's a really, really great experience, a really good idea of what grad school might look like. I mean, not a total perfect picture of what grad school might look like, but it's an introduction. And it's a great experience, get to know your faculty again, get to do something that you're interested in.
Beyond the aspect of working with a faculty member on something that you have a driving interest in, while you're actually researching and trying to write out the thesis, you've got an amazing support cast of Katerina and your fellow senior thesis writers as well, who you can pitch what you're trying to explain to them, and they'll act as a sounding board and say, well, this doesn't seem completely clear, how about you elaborate on this, or this seems to go way off into left field and you need to get back on track with what you're trying to discuss.
It seems pretty common that we all kind of get lost in our terminology for our respective concentrations, and we forget that, you know, maybe everybody doesn't know all the species names of all the human ancestors and all the monkeys and apes and everything. So it was really helpful in that respect. It trains you to be able to speak to a layman type person about these sorts of things, in addition to getting the research experience.
And it teaches the people who aren't quite as well grounded on your specialty to understand more of the terms.
All right, I think that's about it.
Great, thank you. All right, thank you, Isabel and Terence. I will start calling upon our faculty in the different concentrations now to come and say a few words about their own work. So we're going to start with archaeological anthropology.
Yes.
Again,
All right.
and I have this 1 minute and 0 minutes.
I understand.
You
I will try
understand
to do my best here. My name's Jeff Braswell, and I've been a faculty member here since 2003. I'm an archaeologist, and I work in Mexico and Central America. My research interests are the interrelation of ancient economies and political systems, particularly how the two co-develop, co-evolve, and I'm particularly interested in the emergence of markets in the absence of money and how these things function. I work with the Maya of Central America. They're not South America. We'll hear about South America in a bit from Paul Goldstein, but I work in Central America, and I've excavated at quite a number of sites, Maya sites including Copan in Honduras, Caminalhuyu in Guatemala, Calakmul, Chichen Itza in Mexico, Pusilha, Lubantun, which is where the famous crystal skull is from, and Nimli Punit, most recently in Belize. I've also worked elsewhere in Mexico and further south in Nicaragua and El Salvador. This really should be, as Katarina said, about you, not about us. So what I really want to do is spend the rest of my time talking about what I do here that you could participate in. Well, to start off with, I have 4 basic courses. I've only, on the undergraduate level, I've only listed 3 here, but there's a 4th. I teach the mysterious Maya, an introduction to roughly 3,000 years of Maya prehistory and history. I teach a course called The Aztecs and Their Ancestors, about central Mexico, about the societies such as the Olmecs, the Zapotecs of Oaxaca, and of course the Aztecs of where Mexico City is today. And then finally, of course, I'm teaching right now is Pharaohs, Mummies, and Pyramids, an introduction to Egyptology. We all have specialties, and sometimes it's good to get out of them and to do something completely different. Since I can't teach a course on murder mysteries, I thought Egypt would be the next best thing. I also teach a 4th course from time to time, sort of advanced topics in Maya archaeology. Now, I also do a lot of off-campus teaching through our summer study abroad programs, which is something, if not unique for this department in the university, it's virtually unique. I think from time to time some other departments are starting to offer their own study abroad courses. But I want to talk to you about that because historically about 2/3 of our archaeology majors take one of the offerings that 3 of us actually here give. Well, this is some pictures of recent excavations that my students and I participated at Chichen Itza. Maybe you'll recognize that pyramid. We actually dug these holes and studied the site. At Lubantun in southern Belize, we excavated this mound. That's how it looked like when it started. This is how it looked like when we were just about done. I had a few extra pieces, which I eventually had to lose in the woods because I didn't know where they went. That's common in reconstructing. But I really want to spend my last 2-3 minutes talking about study abroad programs. I have 3 that I run and a 4th one which I'm developing and I hope to run this summer. One of them is in Egypt, last offered in 2012. Things aren't really happy there right now, so we're taking a break from Egypt. In addition to seeing 58 archaeological sites, we ride in balloons, we sleep on boats in the Nile, camp in the deserts, and even visit a really cool paleological site where the remains of giant whales are blowing out of the Sahara Desert. These whales have arms, so they date to a time when whales could still walk, which is kind of cool. Very frequently I teach study abroad in the Maya area, Belize, Honduras, Mexico, southern Mexico, and Guatemala. So we see really famous sites like Chichen Itza, Tikal, Uxmal. We boat to many of the sites. All right, I got it. But a lot of the course is outside. So we see lots of animals. For those of you who are interested in biological anthropology, we get to see 2 species of monkeys in addition to the primates we travel with. I have another course in central Mexico, which visits the ancient societies of that region. We also take time off to do a rafting trip and to eat interesting local cuisines such as fried maguey worms. And then finally, the new one that I'm developing for this year focuses on the civilizations of the central Mediterranean. We begin in Malta, where Game of Thrones was filmed. We'll look at ancient temples going back almost 6,000 years. Some of the oldest structures of stone built anywhere in the world are there. We'll move on to Sicily and visit Greek, Phoenician, and Carthaginian sites there, and then finally Pompeii and Herculaneum in Italy proper. If you have any questions on these things, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you more about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And next is Professor Goldstein.
Thank you, Katarina and Nicole, and all the others who are organizing this great event today. How many minutes are we doing?
5.
5 minutes, okay, great. First, before I start, I want to talk a little bit about the most important people who are here, who are you, undergraduate students. First of all, come on down, there's room in front if you're in the back. And how many of you are actually majors already? How many people are shopping? Thinking about it. It's a great major. Do it. We're going to explain to you in infinite detail how great we are, but it's really all about you. And it's a major you can do a lot with. We're a small department. It's very adaptable. There are many different kinds of courses, a huge diversity of things that we study. You're going to see a little bit of it today. And really, it's a place where you can kind of invent what you want to be and what you want to learn as a major, which is not really possible in some of those huge other majors out there. I am one of the archaeologists in our group. We now have 5 of us, which is a fantastic moment. You'll hear about our new person from herself very soon. We're very excited about that. We cover both the Old World and the New World, as Professor Braswell alluded to. My own research is in South America for the most part. I have some other regional interests. I teach courses here on campus about South American archaeology. I also teach the big core course, Anthro 101, which some of you might be in already, and some of you will probably be taking at some point if you're going to go through with the major. I run a field school, which is a little bit like Professor Braswell's program, but it's actually a little more down and dirty in the sense that you're actually participating in a real live archaeological project on site. So we've done this 8 seasons now, all in southern Peru. I've worked also in Chile, Bolivia, and Ecuador at different times. But the Peru Field School has been a really great program. The students have really enjoyed it. We've gotten to see a lot of them go on in archaeology, and at this point succeeding fabulously in graduate school. Others have gone on to other great things, Latin American studies in general, law school, medical school, and so on. But it's a really great experience, and it's a really great way to find out how you feel about the research life, particularly the field research life. Field schools in general are something that professors, well, all of us in archaeology do at some point. And field schools are kind of the way that you discover whether you really want to do this as a research career. The way we do them is through courses that are actual UCSD courses. You can take field schools in many places in the world through all kinds of different administrative programs, but ours are courses in the department. So you're satisfying major requirements directly. You don't have to take transfer credits with any of our programs. And it's all hands-on learning. So it's a great way to get away from kind of the lecture format or even the smaller class format that you'll start to see when you get to be an upper class student. And really see what it's like to do practical research in the field. This is some of our excavations in 12. We're working at a different site now. We've moved from this particular valley where we excavated a large culture, Tiwanaku culture temple. Tiwanaku is probably the biggest pre-Inca state society in South America. We also deal with the Incas. And we've moved on to a different region, a little bit further south, that's completely unexplored. So we've now done our 2nd season of surveying the Locumba Valley. And we'll probably be continuing this coming summer, so it's something, again, to watch out for as you consider going beyond the classroom, which is really one of your goals here in a research university. The reason that you're here, instead of in some place that has much smaller classes and people totally dedicated to undergraduate teaching per se, is that you can reach out beyond and you can do research experiences. You can do one-on-one work in labs, one independent studies, this wonderful honors program here. You can go beyond that sit in the back of the classroom and absorb the lecture kind of experience. And obviously, a field school is one way to do this, but there are many, many different ways you can get into anthropology because we're a relatively small department and we all have very intense research interests outside of the classroom. And your best bet as a student in a university like this is to go explore that aspect of what your professors do when they're not standing up in front of a lecture of 100 people and talking at you. Getting into the field is one way to do this. This is our team from 2015. outstanding in their fields, so to speak. You'll learn lots of great skills. One of the courses I teach on campus, ANTH 180, ANAR 180, is a workshop class where we go through some of the things like, sorry about that, some of the things like how to draw pottery, how to take these skills to the field and turn around and actually use them for research. So I hope to have a chance to see some of you joining our groups in the field and in classrooms in the near future. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, next we have Professor Libby.
Okay, I'd like to welcome all of you here and hope you take our classes. And as Paul said, get into the experiential learning by going on a field school, etc. I want to invite everybody tonight to a lecture in the faculty club by Professor Ronnie Ellenblum from the Hebrew University. It's about affluence and its effects on civilization, and you get food, more food there. So after this, go to the faculty club. Okay, so I'm going to talk more about research and one of our latest projects that I'm involved in. It's about cyber archaeology and at-risk world cultural heritage. And it's based on a grant that we just got from the University of California Office of the President. And I'm excited about it because our graduate students and undergrads are involved in it. And I don't have to tell you that world cultural heritage is under attack in the Middle East in particular. ISIS destroyed this, the oldest Christian monastery in Iraq not so long ago, and we could observe this on through satellite images. So to deal with this rampant destruction, we're trying to use different digital technologies, and that's what our Catalyst grant is about, and it links UCSD with Berkeley, UCLA, and UC Merced. And we do this through an interdisciplinary research center down the hill from here called the Qualcomm Institute, which is a center of excellence for information technology. So how can we fold new developments in anthropology into the information technology revolution? That's what we're trying to do with this grant. And so we have a number of goals for this project, like moving big cultural heritage data sets, digital data that we collect out in the field over networks. We're sending our groups from the 4 universities out to different places around the Middle East and North Africa to collect data. We're developing crowdsourcing tools, and we're visualizing our data in very cool 3D environments, immersive environments. And we're building one for the library here, which you can visit in about a month. So these are the countries we work in. My expertise is actually in the southern Levant, the Holy Land, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, but we're also working in Greece. We have a variety of different projects related to this digital technology that I mentioned, everything from archaeometallurgy to digital workflows and so on. These are just my colleagues from the other universities. We have a number of our graduate students involved and a number of undergraduates. Wow, 1 minute left. Okay. This is just an example of one of these 3D immersive environments that we're building for the library. So you're going to be able to go to like these different parts of the world and sort of go right in there and experience it. And what I'd just like to say is that you're invited to volunteer in our lab. Okay, this is an outreach to the undergrads where you can learn and be a part of this project. So if you email me, I will hook you up with our graduate students, and you will be incorporated into the project. And our lab is right across the hall from here, so you're most welcome. And this is the kind of 3D environment that we're building for not only UCSD's library, but the Merced Library, Berkeley's Phoebe Hearst Museum, and the UCLA Fowler Museum. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And next is our new colleague, Dr. Isabel Rivera Colasso.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming and thanks for being interested in our department. As was mentioned, I'm just arrived. I'm part of the new faculty of the Anthropological Archaeology Division. I specialize in environmental archaeology. I investigate the relationship between people and the environment and people and the sea as well. My position is shared between the Department of Anthropology, but I am also, half of me belongs to Scripps Institution of Oceanography. So I am both here and within the Earth Sciences Division of Scripps. So just to more or less let you know what I am doing, I work on subjects of climate change, landscape change, environmental change, and how people respond to those changes. So concepts of human adaptation and resilience and vulnerability, because even though we have all heard about these changes that we have experienced or expect to experience soon, the crisis and the problem with change is not change in itself, it's how people respond to it. So our specialty in the department and as environmental archaeologists is to try to understand under what conditions people can adapt or maybe cannot adapt to change in climate, in landscape, and environmental conditions. I specialize in the Caribbean. I work specifically on the island of Puerto Rico, where I am originally from. And in that context, I work on concepts of underwater archaeology and coastal archaeology. So my work joins with programs and initiatives from Scripps as well as from here, and projects that Professor Levy is also developing. I specialize on geoarchaeology, which is the study of sediments. So I have a lab also in Scripps where we can analyze dirt to see how people modify the landscapes and how human activity changes the environment. And we also try and go back in time, which is, I think, is one of the most exciting things of archaeology, that we can travel in time and understand how the planet was before now. And one of the things that I work then is to understand how the landscapes change. So the brown is brown and yellow is the island of Puerto Rico today. All the blue would have been dry land at some point in the past, even during times in which people have lived here. So it's an address in which we can try to see how the landscapes were in the past, and we can try and look for them underwater. I also do laboratory work, and in terms of lab, I work mostly with sediments, as I already mentioned, but it's possible also to work with biological information of animals and mollusks, of vertebrates and invertebrates. And as well as plants, we can also work on those in the laboratories at the department at SIO.
Gender, Sexuality, and Society every year. That's sort of a larger lecture course. I'm going to be teaching sociocultural anthropology in the spring. That's going to be my first time for that particular course, though I've taught other courses on cultural anthropology. I teach smaller courses on gender and religion and the anthropology of marriage, which I'm teaching right now. And the small courses are a lot of fun, as well as the lecture courses. I like to incorporate a lot of discussion in all of my classes, whether they're small classes or big ones. And just sort of very basically, these are the three areas that I work in. Sociocultural anthropology, the way I explain to people on airplanes what the difference is between sociocultural anthropology and archaeology, for example, is that I like to talk to my subjects rather than dig them up. People somehow, out there in the world, when you tell people you're an anthropologist, they often think you're an archaeologist, but I actually like to talk to my subjects. Sociocultural anthropology looks at sort of different ways of life, systems of knowledge and belief, power relations, cultural logics. I've always been interested in sort of what motivates people culturally to do what they do, and social organization of people cross-culturally. Anthropology of gender and sexuality, which is really sort of the main area where I work, looks at sex and gender as basically fundamental organizing principles of society. And so we're interested, those of us who study gender and sexuality, we're interested in how gendered and sexual differences are linked to other aspects of social organization, like social roles, politics, economics, culture, and other things. And then the anthropology of religion looks at how religious practices and beliefs are influenced by and influence other aspects of culture and society. And if you sort of want to think about why it's important to study gender as a social phenomenon or as an organizational principle, think about the debates last night. How many of you watched the presidential debates last night? It's pretty obvious gender was a really big issue for a lot of people, not just the two people on the stage, but a lot of people who were watching it. And it was important not just in the fact that the two candidates were male and female, but also you could see it in the body language that was used by the candidates, their style of speech, the kinds of accusations that they threw at each other. There's a lot of ways in which gender is very important. Wish I could say more, but I'm told that my time is up. So if anyone has any other questions, feel free to contact me at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And next is our new colleague, Professor Hannah Garth.
Hi, welcome. I'm Hannah Garth, as was said, and I am a new assistant professor here in anthropology. And my general area of interest is in food. So I'm interested in food in very interdisciplinary ways, but my specific focus on food has been on inequality and what happens when people don't have access to sufficient amounts of food or to the types of food that they desire. So I come at my approach to studying food from a background in sociocultural and medical anthropology, as well as a master's in public health, through which I'm trained in nutrition, although I will not give you advice on your diet. And here at UCSD, I also have affiliations with global health and African American studies. This year, I will be teaching race and racisms in the spring, and that's the only course that I'm scheduled to teach so far, but I'm very interested in future possibilities of teaching the anthropology of food, Latin American and Caribbean anthropology. I also do work in medical anthropology and on issues of embodiment and the body that are related to ingestion. So my research in Cuba has been in Santiago de Cuba, in this city over here next to Haiti, which was not hit by the most recent hurricane. And there I studied how people are struggling to access food as the Cuban food rationing system is slowly going away. And in the next couple of years, maybe more like 5 to 10 years, I'll be starting a new project on obesity and chronic disease on the island. So even though there's food scarcity, there's also obesity, and there's an abundance of crappy food that's high in fat and salt and sugar. So with that, there are rising rates of chronic disease like diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease, which is the #1 killer of Cubans after accidents. I also have an ongoing project in Los Angeles. This was the best picture I could find to summarize Los Angeles. So I study food justice organizations in the city of Los Angeles. So these are nonprofit, county, city, or state organizations that are trying to increase access to healthy food among low-income communities in LA, mostly Black and Latino communities based in South LA and East LA. South Los Angeles is the second poorest region, or second poorest part of a city in the United States, only after the south side of Chicago. So I've been doing that project since 2010, and that is an area where I would love to collaborate with undergraduates who are interested in doing a small project with me. We were told that we're also supposed to talk about why anthropology is so amazing and wonderful. So this was what came up off the top of my head about why UCSD is so amazing and wonderful. I think it's really cool that there's a four fields approach to anthropology, so you can get a breadth in your education and sort of understand important problems in the world from various perspectives. Which is basically the same as the second one. So you're able to sort of think about large systems, like in my case, I could think about global systems of food distribution, and at the same time think about how a micronutrient deficiency might affect an individual. So from big level to teeny tiny molecular level. It's also really it's important to be able to think about problems from diverse perspectives and diverse approaches to the world, even if you're not going to go and be a professor of anthropology when you have a career, but you're going to work in various settings. Those skills that you can develop in anthropology are really important to carry into any sort of career. And also, so I'll skip these two things, but I recently started trying to be really good at Snapchatting, so I'd love it if I could have some more followers and follow some more people, because I only follow one person. And also, I tweet. My tweets are political. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Who here has a piece of leather on them? Can I see hands? Can you hold up the piece of leather on a belonging or yourself? Yeah, can you hold? I need to see it. See it high. I need to see the leather. Fantastic. Sonia, where did that come from?
My nail salon. The lady sold it to me.
Fantastic.
Like where?
So, from the nail salon. Do you know where it came from before that?
I have no idea. Probably Asia.
Probably somewhere in Asia, maybe not. Where did it come from before that?
Cow.
A cow. Maybe one of these cows. Why did you buy that? I mean, we have a vague idea at the nail salon. Why did you buy that?
Well, my nail lady got my wallet that I had before I was wearing out, and she was like, "Oh, I have this. Want to buy it?"
Yeah, Sonia, it's time to switch that out. How about this one?
Yeah.
Fantastic. And you liked it? You agreed with her? Or did you feel pressured into the situation?
I kind of felt pressured.
And she's in the middle of doing your nails too. She could hurt you. So you felt a little bit pressured into it. So from those sets of desires and forces, whatever going on in that nail salon, where you're getting something done, but then someone tells you to buy this thing because your wallet is really cruddy and run out. From there, back to whoever distributed that to that store, back to a distribution center, back to wherever that leather became leather from rawhide, back to maybe a living cow somewhere, unless it's a synthetic cow. All of those things are attached to each other. So your desires not to get hurt or to be pressured into this are in conversation with all of these other desires and labor and whatnot, even if they're 7,000 miles or more separated. So from you to humans who are moving things, to humans who are making things, to other animals altogether. My name is Joe Hankins. I have been a professor here at UCSD for 7 years, and I am originally from a relatively small town in West Texas. My hometown is supported by cotton, oil, and cattle industries. These cows, about 80,000 head of cattle are in 2 different feedlots outside of my hometown. the majority, 73% of the raw hide that's produced out of these feedlots is sent to Japan to be turned into leather there. Some of my high school friends work in these feedlots preg checking cows. I work on projects, most of my projects, or all of my research projects, look at large-scale systems that hook up people and their desires and what's going on, this sort of ties into what Hannah was saying, on minute scales to other people and other non-human animals, maybe even 7,000 miles away. So my first research project followed the commodity chain from my hometown in Texas to Japan. I worked in a leather factory in Japan that processed rawhide from my hometown and worked with the political organization of the people that work there. That group of people has been seen as dirty, marginalized in Japan, and I worked as an interpreter for the group. My first project looked at this huge, broad-scale phenomenon that connected people from my hometown, my high school friend Reagan, to people working in slaughterhouses and tanneries in Japan. My second project looks at the repopulation of rural Japan, how people are making those decisions to move back to rural Japan. And a third future project, perhaps to be done in complement with Hannah, is going to look at food distribution in Los Angeles. These large-scale systems that connect people's intimate desires with each other, even at great distance. Here at UCSD, I teach a variety of classes that tie into this. So I teach a class on capitalism and gender. I teach a class on human and non-human animal relations, where we look at when is a life form a pet, when is it meat, when is a life form a person, when is it property? How do we define what is human, what is not? I also teach a class on the politics of empathy. In addition to being affiliated here in the anthropology department, I'm also affiliated with critical gender studies, and I'm on the list of out LGBT faculty here at UCSD. Come take my classes.
Thank you. Next is Professor John Haviland, who is not here with us right now. He couldn't come in, but he sent us a self-narrated slideshow.
This is John Haviland. Please let me apologize for not being here in person. In the picture, you see a younger and somewhat hairier version of me with my fictive cousin, Roger, the last speaker of a language from northeastern Australia, with whom I had the privilege to work for almost 30 years. I'm a linguistic anthropologist, which means that I approach the study of humankind through language, the primary vehicle through which we are all socialized, and by means of which we come to be able to coordinate our actions with one another. Language is also, of course, a principal source for understanding the history and prehistory of society, and one of the great puzzles in the evolution of our species. As I routinely argue in class, language is a characteristic example of the apparent contradiction that we can have intricate and systematic knowledge of something, the rules and structures of our languages, for example, and yet be largely unconscious of the underlying systems, frequently unable to formulate them or even bring them to awareness. I've been at UCSD for just over a decade, and the titles of some of the undergraduate courses I routinely teach are listed on the slide. I have several ongoing projects, all involving the linguistic foundations of human interaction, whether via speech or other sorts of communicative modalities, gesture and the body, for example. In both southeastern Mexico and northeastern Australia, my research concentrates on questions of self and identity, how language plays a central part in defining who one is in relationship to where one belongs, what one knows, and what one can do. More specifically, in the past few years, I've been especially interested in how the languages one speaks affects the outcomes of one's encounters with the law, work that grows out of my own writing as a qualified social interpreter in a variety of legal and other bureaucratic encounters in Mexico and across the United States. My central new research since coming to UCSD involves the very nature and creation of language. I have been documenting both the linguistic structure and social life of an extremely young sign language in a singles family in a small Indian community in Mexico, created without influence from other deaf people or other pre-existing sign languages. Just to give you an idea of how this language looks, on the next slide is a video of a 6-year-old child describing a photograph to his mother and uncles who are deaf. I invite you to try to work out what he says before seeing the subtitled version on the following slide. I also invite you to consider what sorts of representational principles are involved in the signs he and the other signers have jointly invented in their new language. The boy is describing a picture in which one can see a set of car keys, along with a bag of sugar and a small container of instant coffee. His signs quite transparently invoke the characteristic actions that people perform with these objects. There are several opportunities for undergraduate research that derive from my ongoing work, and I've listed a few on the slide. I've worked with a number of undergraduate interns and research assistants in the past few years, mostly transcribing and analyzing spoken or videotaped linguistic interactions in different settings from my fieldwork. Linguistic anthropology also provides opportunities to study, learn, and put to use in ethnography a variety of otherwise underdescribed exotic languages, both abroad and in our own backyards here in the border regions in and around San Diego. Finally, allow me to introduce two of my graduate students in linguistic anthropology, both currently completing dissertations. Alima Welchi has worked in Jordan on education and childhood socialization into morality in the volatile climate of recent migrations throughout the region. Sarah Goico has worked in the Amazonian frontier town of Iquitos, Peru, also studying language and education, but here among deaf individuals who have had recently little or no contact with any sign language community, and thus in some sense deprived of a model of language itself. We all welcome you to seek us out, to learn more about opportunities for you to explore the anthropological life of language. Thanks.
Okay, so next is our new colleague, Professor Dredge Kang. Let's skip a slide now.
Thank you, Nicole, for putting together this lovely event today. My name is Dredge Kang. I'm one of the new professors here in the department, and I'll tell you a little bit about my research and what I do. So this year I'm teaching 3 courses. Next quarter I'm teaching Race and Racisms, which Hannah will be teaching in the spring. And in the spring I'm teaching 2 seminars, an undergraduate upper division seminar, a global health perspective on HIV, and I'll also be teaching a graduate seminar, the Anthropology of Love. So my research focuses on what I call the issues: race, gender, sexuality, class, nationality, etc. And these are, in my mind, intersectional issues, so I look at them all together as opposed to separately. And these coalesce in certain fields, like the anthropology of love, the anthropology of beauty, the anthropology of violence. I'm interested in areas such as sex work, and that's one of the courses I'd like to develop in the future. I'd also like to develop a course on gender variance, or transgenderism more broadly. Next year, I'm planning on proposing a class on the Korean wave, and I'll probably also try to teach our regional seminar on Southeast Asia. My background is also, like Hannah's, in public health, and so I'm a trained medical anthropologist and have an MPH in global health as well. So some of the research that I'm currently doing, so this is from my dissertation project. My dissertation was called White Asians Wanted, Queer Racialization in Thailand. And I make the argument that, as we all know, race is a social construct and it's specific to different kinds of cultural constraints. So I'm looking specifically in the Thai context and talking about how Thailand is becoming Asian, because Asianness cannot be assumed in any given situation. So in the US, we have this idea that Asian people exist in the world, but that's actually not true in Asia itself, right? Asians don't necessarily exist in Asia. So I'm arguing that there's this new construction of Asianness within Asia, and in Thailand, I'm specifically looking at what I'm calling the white Asian, which is light-skinned Asians from economically developed countries. And I'm linking this to beauty practices and relationship practices in the sense that I argue that Thai people are trying to embody white Asianness. So they're trying to do things like lighten their skin, not to become Caucasian, but to become a better kind of Asian, right? So I have these slides like this cosmetic product. This is Make Me White, which some people would interpret as Make Me Caucasian. But I argue that it's not about Make Me Caucasian, it's actually about Make Me Asian in a better way. Right? So what is the meaning of whiteness in this context? It's not the same kind of whiteness that we think of as we relate it to Caucasianness in America. And this is very class structured. So this is a very particularly middle class kind of phenomenon. And the second part of my argument is that people in this kind of context, and if you know anything about Thailand, it's known for international sex tourism. So one of the things that happens is that people try to differentiate themselves from poor people who are often considered sex workers. So one of the ways to differentiate oneself is to not be seen in public with Caucasian people. Because Caucasians are considered to be the consumers of sex tourism services. So if you don't want to be seen as a sex worker, you would avoid those kinds of relationships in public, right? So that if you're with another Asian person, you seem like a normal person. Whereas if you're seen with a Caucasian person, people might interpret you as a prostitute. The second piece of research that I'm currently working on is on the Korean wave in Thailand. And so I'm looking at how the Korean wave, not as a media product, but how the media in the Korean wave is being consumed in Thailand and specifically leads to new forms of gender and sexuality, right? So this, for example, is an image from a website that sells clothes to toms. So toms in Thailand are kind of a form like butch lesbian in America. And you can see that these individuals are presenting themselves in particularly masculine ways, but in a soft masculine way that they're modeling off of Korean masculinity, not off of other forms of masculinity. So one of the things I'm looking at is how, for example, Korean media products are not being just consumed, but are being embodied in everyday kind of practices of gender and sexuality in Thailand. So one of the things that I can offer, and I want to emphasize that the vast majority of you who are undergrads in anthropology will not pursue graduate work in anthropology. You'll probably do something else. And I'm one of those people who's done other things. So if you're particularly interested in work in nonprofit organizations, in global health, those are kinds of areas where I have a lot of experience and I can help advise you in those areas. Let's see. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My research is on indigenous people. I've been working and studying in Bolivia for about 20 years. This summer I was in the same village that I started working in about 20 years ago, and we all looked around. It's like all the little kids are now grown-ups with their own little kids. When I say a village, don't think I work on small-scale little villages, indigenous people out in the middle of nowhere. I work in small communities in big cities in Latin America, so I'm very interested in indigenous people as political actors at the national and international levels. So my questions really have to do with difference. What does it mean to be indigenous in the contemporary world? I started working on that about 20 years ago when the indigenous movement in Latin America started becoming a really big political actor, and I kept wondering to myself, well, what does it mean these days to be indigenous? And it's taken on even more importance in the contemporary world. Bolivia has about 70% of its population that self-identify as an indigenous. And since 2005, the first indigenous president was elected. So it's sort of like in South Africa when Nelson Mandela was elected. At the end of apartheid, hundreds of years of colonialism, the same thing is true in Bolivia. So I've been thinking about this indigenous revolution, and I've just finished a book called The Indigenous State, in which I evaluate the first 10 years of indigenous rule of a country and ask, what does it mean for the country, for liberalism, for democracy, to have indigenous people run their own country? Can you imagine they just in 2006 had their own constitutional convention? What would we do if we had our own constitutional convention nowadays, if it weren't just a bunch of rich, white, propertied men who made the decisions about what the country should be like? What would our democracy look like? So that's what I've been looking at in Bolivia. What does that mean for citizenship and for human rights? So I do want to remind people that human rights is an up-and-coming minor here at UCSD. And yet we still think a lot about, people talk about human rights as if it were a given. It's actually a very contested field. People don't necessarily agree that it's the appropriate framework. In what ways are we trying to impose universal values on the world? So I want to just suggest that if you're interested in these questions, to come take some of our human rights classes and perhaps think about being one of our human rights minors. Let me tell you about some of the things that human rights can offer for you as undergrads. Not only do we have a minor program, we also have there's a human rights internship that is run by UC Berkeley that the UCSD program nominates people to. We sometimes do undergrads and sometimes graduate students, and it's a really interesting way to get a summer stipend and go study with a human rights organization across wherever you'd like to be, here in this country or elsewhere. Or also you can be one of the members of the Center for Global Justice's Blum Institute, which allows two human rights students each year to be part of their staff studying at the local community stations. So if you're interested in thinking about and doing that, please see me. Just want to show pictures of some of my wonderful graduate students who work Bolivia, Mexico. So I invite you to come take classes with us and meet my wonderful graduate students. Thanks.
And of course the war in Iraq. And I have, based on the research in El Salvador, I'm now focusing on these three major wars. You may wonder why. Well, actually, the major people organizing and thinking about how to conduct those wars are in fact the same folks across all three wars. They started out as junior people in Vietnam. They had sort of their mid-career in El Salvador, and they had their sort of tail end of their career in Iraq. And a big part of this research involves interviewing people who've come to Southern California from all three of those wars, either fleeing them because of the violence or being resettled here because they had participated in the war as soldiers and so forth. And this is people on all sides of all of these wars. They're all here in Southern California. I don't have a formal mechanism to invite you to participate in my research, but it's wide open, and if you're interested in this topic and research in Southern California as it relates to Iraq and Iraqis, Vietnamese and Salvadorans, I would be pleased to meet with you. I have advised undergraduates in honors theses who have done work related to this research, and I'm happy to continue to brainstorm with anyone who wants to figure out a way you might connect your own interests with mine. The other project that I'm working on right now is migrant remittances and high finance. Well, it's ebbed and flowed, but there are a number of major banks here in the United States that are very interested in facilitating the transfer of remittances. Again, in the case, it's remittances to El Salvador, it's remittances to Mexico, it's remittances to Vietnam, one of the largest recipients of remittances in the world, and also a growing business in remittances to Iraq from Iraqis who've been settled here in the greater San Diego area. So I'm working on that. I can explain how banks make money on remittances. It isn't just fees, they actually do things with remittances like what banks did with home mortgages. You bundle the possibility of future flows of remittances and you sell them as a security. And then the last project, this is a big project that I'm involved with folks at the Scripps Institute for Oceanography. Teresa Sinacrope-Talley and I are kind of the leads in this. We also are working with Dick Norris and Lisa Levin. And it's a multiplex, multi-dimensional project. And what we're exploring by combining oceanographers, wetland ecologists, and also social scientists, anthropologists in particular, is the relationship between the immediate waterfront of San Diego, the food that grows in the waterfront, in particular fish and shellfish, the way that those are consumed by folks living here in San Diego, informally and formally, and also the way that practices in San Diego may affect the quality of the water here in the area.
So I don't have a great detailed picture on that. Anyway, and these are the courses that I teach very quickly. I have taught debating multiculturalism. I teach a course called Anthropology of Capitalism, also a course Critical Military Studies. I also teach a course on the intersection of anthropology and history, and a course called Brain, Mind, Culture, History, and also a course on economic anthropology. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so welcome back. I would like to move on into the faculty members who are part of the biological anthropology concentration in our department. And I would like to just mention that Professor Margaret Scheninger, one of our colleagues here for the last 15 years, cannot be with us here today. So I'm only going to just briefly mention the courses that she regularly teaches with us. And then I would encourage you to email her or contact her if you want more information about what it is that she offers in terms of research opportunities for you. So, evolution of human diet, the human machine, the skeleton within, stable isotopes in diet and ecology, and bioethics are some of the courses that she teaches. So let me skip these slides and go into my own work and background. So. Let me start by saying I am the Director of Undergraduate Studies. This is a job that I like very much. It's because I work with students. I want to just remind everyone, our university is a student-centered research university. And this is very important. We want students to be involved. Professor Goldstein, I think, touched upon that when he talked about his own work. We want you guys to be involved with what we're doing and make the most out of your stay at UCSD. So the idea is that we are here because we did something really very exciting and interesting in terms of our research work, and we want to pass that on to our graduate students and to you. So having said that, I am going to just say a few words about the kind of research that I do. I am very interdisciplinary, so my background is both on biological anthropology, evolutionary anthropology, and the neurosciences, so I was trained in both fields. I got my PhD way back then, probably before any of you were born, at the University of Iowa. I did my postdoc there in cognitive neurosciences and neurology. And I have been at UCSD for 19 years now, so for a very, very long time. My teaching is mostly focused these days on the honors program. My regular teaching includes also some of the courses that I list up there, brain-mind, interaction workshop, methods in human comparative neuroscience, the evolution of the human brain, modeling of ancestral behavior. So probably one of these courses is going to be offered later this year. If not, look for that for next year. So the fundamental question that I address in my research has to do with, okay, what is it in the human brain mind that makes humans unique from non-human primates? What is it in the organ of the mind, the brain, that really sets us apart from other non-human animals? So a long time ago, I started with the help of my advisors, I started looking at sort of the overall brain anatomy and morphology, looking into great apes, our closest relatives, and modern humans, and try to identify, using what used to be back then a modern technique, a new technique, the structural magnetic resonance imaging technique, to try to identify what in the brain of the great apes seems to be different, both within the great apes, gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, versus humans. All of my work is non-invasive, so I don't experiment with animals. These are imaging studies that we did with apes and humans using the same parameters. And after years of being here, I expanded my studies into the question of, okay, well, in addition to the gross morphology, to the overall brain differences that we can maybe identify between humans and apes, what is it in the fine structure, in the fine neural structure that separates humans from non-human primates? And what is it in humans, within humans, that really is very, very variable? So the fundamental question that we address now in the laboratory for human comparative neuroanatomy with my students is precise that at various levels of investigation. And the way we do that is we focus on not only gross anatomy, but histology. My lab is right across from this room. We take donations of brains, both from human donors, and also we work with zoos to get tissue after the animals die from natural causes, and we process those brains and we visualize them and we reconstruct them and we address various aspects of their morphology to see what it is that makes us stand out. Another dimension that was recently added in our work in the laboratory is that of a specific human neurodevelopmental disorder known as Williams syndrome. Williams syndrome, children have a very specific deletion of only 26 genes being deleted in chromosome 7, and that deletion leads to a very different phenotype. So individuals with Williams syndrome, as the website of the parents of the organization describes, have different strengths and different weaknesses. And one set of strengths that I find particularly fascinating is that of sociality. So the Williams syndrome individuals are extremely outgoing, friendly, they are more approachable, they are less afraid to approach strangers, they're very, very interested in social interactions, which to me makes Williams syndrome a very, very interesting case to study because, of course, humans and primates are extremely social, and sociality and social cognition are some of the issues that really characterize our evolution. So what we do with tissue donated from individuals with Williams syndromes, along with typically developing kids, is look at that tissue and try to identify what is it that sets different populations apart in the sense that the neurodevelopmental disorder versus the typically developing ones, and also within primate comparisons. One of the set of findings that we just had published this summer has to do with the degree of branchiness, the degree of development of individual neurons in the brains of Williams syndrome individuals as opposed to typically developing individuals. So depending on the level that we look at, we find different aspects of the structure of the underlying neural systems that seems to either be shared or different depending on the structure that we look at. I do all of that with my students. Actually, the students lead the way in terms of the day-to-day operations in that. We incorporate undergraduates in our laboratory. This is a very important aspect of what we do here. So I like to take laboratory volunteers in the beginning, and then hopefully, depending on the amount of funding that I have available, hire them as research assistants, trying to get into federal grant competitions and UC-wide campus competitions to fund my students. I'm involved with the Mentoring Marshall College program and a variety of other opportunities that can get you guys into the lab and get some more intimate, small group attention than what you would get in a big lecture room. All of this is done with my graduate students, as I said, and they are the ones at the forefront and lead the laboratory operations, and they become the mentors themselves of the undergrads. It's what we have here on board is some of my current students, Kari, Branka, Caroline, and Linnea, and some of the undergrads that have worked with me in the past. And I would like to invite any of you who are interested possibly in this kind of topic to contact me or my students and become involved. So I'm going to stop here. That's what I had to present about myself. So next we have our new colleague, Professor Amy Nunn. Amy is on maternity leave right now, so she cannot possibly be with us right now. I'm not going to go over any details. Again, you would need to contact her to find out more when she comes back from her leave. But she arrived last year, and she offers courses on biology of inequality, human evolutionary biology, biology and culture of race. She has a laboratory where she does genetic anthropology, and methods is one of the courses that she teaches, and intro to biological anthropology. Amy does epigenetics And it's a very new addition to our department, so I would really encourage you to contact her and take her courses later in the year when she is back from maternity leave. The fourth and last person in our major is Professor Shirley Strom. Now, Professor Strom is in the field studying the baboons in Kenya in the fall and winter quarter of every year, and she's here teaching and available to you every spring quarter of the year. Because she cannot possibly be here in this fall event, I asked her senior graduate student, Corinna Most, who studies with her, to present her slides. So Corinna, if you would like to come up and go over Shirley's slides, that would be great.
Hi everybody, yes, I am Shirley's senior student because I'm also her one and only graduate student. So it's my pleasure to present this PowerPoint that she prepared for you guys. As Katrina said, she's not here because she's not only a professor at UCSD, but she's also the director of the Wazoniro Baboon Project in Kenya, and she spends most of the year in Nairobi. So the Wazoniro Baboon Project is actually one of the longest running research projects in Kenya. It's located in the Laikipia Plateau near Mount Kenya. Most of the researchers there are actually locals that have been hired by Shirley over the course of the duration of the project. And then there's a smattering of international students, such as myself and other interns that go and conduct shorter research periods. But most of our long-term data is collected by local Kenyan researchers. The UMBP's motto, I was not aware of this, but is science to understand our origins, conservation to guarantee our future. And Shirley was actually one of the first people to talk about social complexity in non-human primates, and this kind of opened the way to talking about non-human primate minds. So if you're interested about primate cognition and the evolution of human cognition, get in touch with her in the spring. And if you can't wait until the spring, come talk to me. So this is a short video that Shirley wanted to show you. She chose it because this is a very good example of the very profound social relationships and social networks that are embedded in interactions between different baboons. And they look very human-like when you see them, but it's all the more remarkable that the baboons are doing this because they have to manage their social world without language or without material culture. So there's very sophisticated social cognition that's going on without the supports that humans have. Lots of subtle interactions there. Now, baboons are great study subjects, not just because they're easy to see, they're large and terrestrial, which makes them very easy to follow. And the baboons here in particular are very well habituated. Most of them have been born and raised being followed by humans. But you can also look at not just the social behavior, but also how they interact with their environment. They're omnivorous and very flexible foragers, so It's very interesting to see how they adapt even to newly invasive species and how quickly they incorporate them into their diet. You can look at social complexity, the emergence of behavior from social interactions, even complex behavior, like troop decisions, where to go during the day. You can look at individual choice, and they also are models that critique evolutionary assumptions of what it is that makes us humans. Chimps tend to be the models that are used most commonly recently because they're so genetically close to us, but baboons probably live in an environment that is more similar to what humans actually evolved in. So they are great alternative models to chimps. They're very smart, very curious. You can see a couple of them making sure vehicles are conforming to regulations. One of them is checking our data for mistakes. They're very curious, they're very human-like in their manipulation of objects, which makes them horrible to have around camp because they're really good at opening things and stealing things. Yes, so be careful, don't feed baboons. And another thing that Shirley's really interested in is not just baboons for baboons' sake, but in general conservation and biodiversity. So baboons, unlike many other primate species that are studied, are not endangered, which is great, but they're actually also considered pests, where there's a lot of them. Like I said, they're really good at stealing things. And one of the things they steal are crops, or baby goats, baby chickens. So there's a lot of human-wildlife conflict in the area. And Shirley has developed a lot of strategies to deal with that. One of the things she had to deal with was translocation. So she's actually really famous for having moved 3 whole troops of baboons from one spot in Kenya to another one. And then she had to manage all of the relationship between the newly introduced baboons and the people that already lived there. So one of the things she does is she hires local people that act not just as researchers, but also ambassadors to the local community. But another way she does this is she supports local projects that benefit the community. And actually her and her husband were the first promoters of community-based conservation, which argues that to make conservation functional, you have to make the local people stakeholders. You have to make them benefit from the conservation process and from having the animals there. So the Tuala Cultural Manyata is a research center for women in the local area, and there they can develop small businesses like aloe harvesting or having beehives. And one of the things they can do is also take tourists on baboon walks. So there's this famous tourist activity, which is called Walking with Baboons, where they follow one of the troops that we habituated. And this is Shirley's conclusion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karina. From the perspective of the undergraduate program, the next few colleagues who are psychological medical anthropologists, together with what you already witnessed in the sociocultural segment of our presentation, are going to be teaching you toward your sociocultural anthropology concentration. So I have 4 colleagues who are going to come up and tell us about their work. The first one is Professor Tom Chordas, and he is the chair of our department.
I am Tom Chordas. I am the chair of the Anthropology department, and I'm also director of the Global Health Program, which is an interdisciplinary program based here in the Anthropology department. And it offers its own major and minor in global health. So I have 2 different roles here for that. What I want to say is that there's really only one question that anthropology asks, and that's, what does it mean to be human? And all the other questions that we ask are variants or derivatives or sub-questions of that. And I'm completely absorbed and fascinated in that question, and I'm tickled to be able to spend all my time asking it and looking for answers. The first course that's up there is my favorite course to teach, and I'm going to be teaching it again next year. It's called Meaning and Healing. Because one of the most important things about what does it mean to be human is how we make ourselves human and how we transform ourselves. And because of that, I have paid a lot of attention to the anthropology of religion. I've paid a lot of attention to psychological anthropology and medical anthropology. And I've paid a lot of attention to global health, because one of the most important places where meaning is made, meaning is questioned, where creativity and imagination come out like a bodily excretion almost, is in the area where we are struggling to be our most healthy and productive selves, and struggling to try to surmount suffering and illness. So in this course, Meaning and Healing, what I do is I take a tour around the world and look at different kinds of healing systems. Let's see, which way are we going? Down or up with this?
That right.
Right or left? Right? Okay. I also teach a course on indigenous North American cultures. This is a map of the Southwest, the Four Corners area where Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona come together, showing the Navajo Indian Reservation. And it's a pretty conventional looking map. And this is another version of the same place, which is a different way of defining the land where the Navajo people live in a way that answers the question, or asks the question, of what does it mean to be human, in a different way. Rather than the coordinates of the four corners and the boundaries of a reservation, this shows a mythical version of the same place, defined by four sacred mountains, encompassed by a long rainbow. Different ways of making meaning of the world. I've paid a lot of attention, I told you, to healing. I did a big study of the Navajo Nation's forms of healing, and how the patients and healers interact with one another, and how the different forms of healing interact with one another. This is a Navajo Hogan, where they do traditional Navajo ceremonies that can take up to 9 days and nights. This is a tent revival meeting where Navajo Christian faith healers try to bring people back to health. This is a teepee, not a Navajo structure, but a Plains Indian structure that's borrowed by people in the Native American church, where another form of healing takes place, the Native American church peyote healing. And this is my colleague, Professor James. And of course, there's also hospital healing. All of these different forms of healing are transformation of people's experience, different ways of making meaning. That's what we're about with anthropology. I hope that all of you consider joining us in our endeavors and in our quest for answering the question of what does it mean to be human. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Next is Professor Janice Jenkins.
Thanks. I'm very glad to be here today to have the opportunity to talk to some of you who are on the fence deciding what to do for your majors, as well as some of you who are already on board. It's very exciting. And you've already seen like a couple of my slides, sort of. We will leave it to your own judgments about gender and technology, who's better. But I think it's the difference between PC people and Mac people. So that is exactly one of the things that I have to talk about, which has to do with the one thing that we all have in common as Homo sapiens, which is diversity. These are some of the courses that I teach. I am, as Professor Samantha Ferry said in the introduction of this particular group of faculty, a psychological and medical anthropologist. And we combine these things in creative ways in a manner that is probably, I think, the most exciting thing about anthropology, the way that we can blend things in manners that really not the case in really any other field. It's almost like an intellectual fishing license to do whatever you want to do. So let me tell you a little bit about what I have done. I had training initially in psychological anthropology from UCLA, and then went to Harvard for a special training program in medical anthropology. And so as you see here, some of the courses I teach are precisely on that. And things like culture and emotion, global health and cultural diversity, which is one of our core courses for that major. And it really, it's been a very interesting kind of synergy to see how a lot of our majors and students who are interested in some of the health and biological sciences have come into anthropology through this route, because the fact of the matter is that even though I'm talking about medical and psychological anthropology, everything is integrated. This is simply a slide to show that this is us. Now this is very dated in a different number, but we had to update our slides for our superb undergraduate advisor, Nicole, and she gets things done, which is her and our director of undergraduate studies. They get things done. So this is a little bit dated, but we're, over 7.3 billion persons that are us, Homo sapiens. And as I say, the one true thing we have is the diversity that we share. And we know that to really think anthropologically, we're often thinking on multiple levels of analysis: cultural, psychological, biological, ecological, social structural. Specifically, and I see a couple people in here, undergraduates, who have actually been in some of my courses, what I refer to as repeat offenders. They know that we talk about structural violence and some of the institutional arrangements that are definitely not good for one's everyday life, and they're certainly not good for one's health either. So looking across these different levels of analysis can be a very powerful way, and a very intriguing way, and also a very vexing one at the same time, to think about these things and how they come together. So to take health and mental health in particular, I say to you simply that culture plays a role in nearly every aspect of areas of research that go on in terms of mental health. And this is not commonly understood, although there's lots of research. Some of it my team and I have done over the decades now to demonstrate this ethnographically and empirically. Who gets sick? Unfortunately, a lot of problems with mental health are not equal opportunities. There are disparities that put certain persons more at risk, a more precarious kind of ecology that people live in that makes them more likely to have problems. But interestingly and unexpectedly, there is a really big difference transnationally for people who do develop problems with mental health, serious problems, who gets better, who recovers, and who does not. Contrary to what we had thought, that good health care in Europe and the United States might make a difference, this is not the case, because some of the worst outcomes occur in those places. And so some of our research has been focused on what those cultural, psychological, and social structural features are that make a difference in terms of people's lives, the meanings of their lives, and their health status. And this last slide is just a few books that I have, and with that, we will be moving on to our next colleague here.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Next is Professor Steve Parrish.
For the first time in human history. And you're going to develop and have careers and age into that world. And it's going to affect everything, human rights, it's going to affect global mental health, it's going to affect economies, it just is, right? A fundamental transformation. So I had some contacts over in the middle school, and we have founded a Center for Healthy Aging. And the part of that you could participate in is the Life Course Scholars Program, which is a practicum course that gets people out into communities, right? And I think that's very important that people have an actual experience of actual human beings out there in the community. Just one more comment. So that's sort of what I do. I was going to read a letter from a student, and the student, because the student's asking me for a letter of recommendation, and she reminds me who she is, and I haven't forgotten her. She's wonderful. And she's going to tell me, I took this course with you, and we had a executive vice chancellor come in, and we wrote a proposal to found an intergenerational center. And she would remind me that intergenerational center actually exists in the larger sustainability center, right? And she would talk about the impact of the course. And any one of my colleagues could talk about the impact of their teaching, the way that it's transformed students' aspirations, right? Their aspirations and their sense of the future. And she would remind me that she had a critique of successful aging, and that I advised her that you have to have a critique, and then out there in the real world you have to figure out how you're going to make things better. And ethnography and hands-on learning is critical to actually taking the knowledge that you acquire here and being able to apply it out in the world and have the wonderful jobs that you deserve, right?
And I have here Samantha Struley, who is going to go over this opportunity with you.
Cool. All right, I am Samantha Struley. I am a PhD student in biological anthropology. So basically, I just wanted to tell you really quick, if you haven't received the emails, maybe you have, maybe you kind of ignore them like we tend to do when we get a lot of emails from the department. We have developed this Anthropology Mentor Protege program. So essentially what we're doing is we're trying to pair up graduate students with undergraduates who have similar interests in terms of research, classes, grad school interests, and see if we can put you together with a grad student who might be able to help you navigate your major a little bit more, kind of help you figure out what you want your future to be in the field of anthropology. And so we've talked about, all of the subfields here. A lot of you probably already have an idea of what subfield you're interested in. If you don't have an idea yet, that's another thing that hopefully the grad students can help you with a little bit. And so this program is mostly for anyone who might need a little bit of extra help navigating their degree in anthropology. Those who may want to pursue graduate school, we obviously have a lot of insight into that since we're currently in the process. Those who want a better idea of what to do with their degree. So someone else mentioned the fact that there are a lot of other careers that people go into that are not graduate school. A lot of grad students have some insight into those types of careers as well. And any undergrad that's interested essentially can participate in this program. So we try to offer guidance in terms of careers, graduate school applications, help finding and developing research projects. So many graduate students are involved in our own research. This can be a good way for us to mentor you and we get that experience, but also you can get some experience working one-on-one with a graduate student. Sometimes we might be a little bit more accessible than professors, but it depends on the professor. Helping you to learn how to present your research, you can practice that with us. Helping to prepare and apply for grad school, developing your academic CV or resume, and also help with classes if that's something you find you need help with. So if you're interested in getting involved, you can fill out a form online. This is the link to the form. And then you'll basically just be paired up with a mentor. I'm going to leave that out for a second in case anybody wants to write it down. Or take a picture of it. I forget that that's a thing. I feel really old. Okay. Like there were definitely not cameras on phones when I was in, yeah. Okay. So upcoming events. We have a couple things coming up that we really want you guys to come to. If you can, we have a Meet Your Mentor event. It's going to be Monday, October 24th from 1:30 to 2:30 in the Spiral Library, which is upstairs if anybody hasn't been there yet. So basically this is going to be an opportunity to just kind of mingle with the mentors, meet someone that is your mentor if you haven't met them yet, meet potential mentors if you're just interested in exploring the program. We're going to try and have some snacks and stuff hopefully, so stop by if you're interested. And then we're going to have a grad school application workshop on Monday, November 14th at 2 p.m. That's also going to be in the Spiral Library. So if anybody needs assistance with their grad school applications, we're going to try and sit down and workshop those with you guys, tell you what's important about grad school applications. You can ask us lots of questions, because I know that applying is one of the most stressful parts of grad school. So yeah, that's it. If anybody has questions, I didn't put my email address on here, I don't think. My email address is my first initial S, and this, my last name, Striley. Most people don't know how to spell it. At ucsd.edu. So you can email me if you have questions, and that's about it for me.
Thank you so much, Sam. This is amazing. Okay, so the last speaker for today is Sarah Bach-Kachaluba. She is our wonderful new librarian. We are very, very happy to have her with us here today. So she's going to share with you a few words about her background and what she plans to probably do with all of you.
Okay. All right, so hi everybody. I'm your librarian. I have a PhD in Latin American history, and so I came here last June, not this past June, but the previous year, as a Latin American studies librarian, and Spanish and Portuguese languages and literatures. And then this year I took on anthropology and archaeology as well, which I'm really happy to do. I came here from Florida State University, where I was a librarian for 9 years, and I did do anthropology and archaeology for a long time there. And I am also interested in anthropology and archaeology, as I'll explain. So just quickly, relevant parts of my academic background to anthropology, archaeology. As I said, I have a PhD in Latin American history, and my work has been on 20th century Mexican women and gender, reproductive politics. So one thing I'm excited about is that there's such an emphasis on public health and gender and women's sexuality here at UCSD. And I did coursework, of course, throughout Latin America, including pre-Columbian up to the present, so I've always been interested in ruins. I'd like to visit them. Who's been interested in archaeology. As part of my dissertation on women's organized movements in the 20s and 50s, I carried out a series of oral history interviews with women that were organized, mobilized, but when I talked to these women, I learned all about their lives. And so I became very interested in the community histories that these women had lived and were part of. And so now I'm continuing my ethnographic research in these communities, partly very interested in how these have changed in the 14 years between when I originally did the interviews and I went back in 2014, and how these communities, which were pretty isolated, are changing in the face of particularly tourism in the state of Yucatan. And I'm building a digital website to both tell those stories and also allow interaction with them from anybody who's interested, from other researchers and also people living in those communities themselves. So I'm interested in lots of different things, and I enjoy many different things, and I'm here to help you. So questions on the library website, there is a link to Ask a Librarian. There's links across the top, it's to the right. And you can just ask a question, you can ask a librarian through chat, through that, or you can find subject librarians and contact your librarian. I work with other librarians as well, like for example, there's a librarian for ethnic studies, librarian for critical gender studies, librarians for international studies, so we'll collaborate as needed. There's all these different ways to get in touch with us. And then also we have research guides for lots of topics, including anthropology. If you go on the website to research tools, I think it is, and there's a drop down, there's subjects A to Z, there's research guides on all kinds of different subjects. So there's several for anthropology, which I can thank my predecessor for, Kathy Crayley. But I'll add things to those. We just created a South Asian Studies research guide. Of course, there's Latin American studies, Chinese studies, Japanese and Korean studies, etc. Tons of things, economics, everything you can imagine. So that also is another way of pointing you to the librarians that can help you with different things. So let's see, more help. Try library research consultation. Contact any of us, me, other librarians to set up a one-on-one, or I sometimes do them in small groups, 2 or 3 people. That is probably my favorite thing about being a librarian. I do lots of things and I love that. And everybody's talking about careers too. I'm always happy to talk about becoming a librarian. It's a wonderful profession that I love. So I do lots of things. I select library materials. If you find there's a book you need or a movie you need or anything you need that you can't get a hold of, contact me. I'll buy it if I can, or I'll help you borrow it from somewhere else. I do research consultations, I do instruction to help professors, usually one shot, explaining how to use the library, but I can do more. These are all things you can learn by going to see. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. So this concludes our formal program. I would like to thank first and foremost the students, all of you who came here. I would like to thank the honors students and the Anthro Club students and the graduate students who came here and supported this event. And maybe we can take any questions that you may have right now before we go and hit the pizza next door.